Brady, are you there? Guess it's just me and you today. Well, I don't have much prepared for today. I was hoping there'd be other people so that we could have a discussion around whatever topic you all wanted to cover. I guess I could tell you a little about what's going on up at the community garden right now and kind of walk you through that. And maybe we could cover some springtime planting stuff, and we'll see how that all goes, I guess. So at the garden, we have a lot of seedlings in flats right now. We have a couple different tomato varieties, mostly cherry tomatoes. One called Sugar Annie's, and then we have a yellow currant tomato, and we also have some ground cherries. And we'll be planting those out, once the chance of frost is gone, probably a couple weeks from now, end of April, beginning of May. And those are going out in the raised beds. They will be pruned up to have one or two canes, and that way they will be vining tomatoes and not the bush varieties that you sometimes see at home or in garden centers and stuff like that. And I found that is an easy way to manage tomatoes, and it also prevents some diseases and pests because it allows for a lot of airflow in between each plant, and that can cause like powdery mildew and different other diseases in tomatoes that are common. But so yeah, if you prune them up and then stake them, they continue to produce. So they'll, indeterminate tomatoes will grow. Well, they're perennials, so they'll grow even past winter time, but most temperate climates, the frost kills them.
Here.
Yeah. Ground cherries. Yeah. There's a bunch of different varieties, and these ones are what are they called? They're the Peruvian ground cherries, or Cape gooseberry. They make a delicious jam or preserve, and so I really enjoy planting them. But we do have a couple of wild varieties that show up on the margins of the garden, and then in other plots. And they're always delicious. Yeah. And then so we also have a whole lot of Sama or tobacco growing at the garden right now. And we do that every year, and we give out little starts to local tribal members and community members. So we'll be doing that again about 3 weeks, I think, is when those should be ready to be given away.
That's Kaya DeerInWater.
And then we also have, I just pulled all of our spring onions. So we'll be doing some gourds in the community garden. We have lots and lots and lots of sage. I will be starting a program where I will be giving smudge sticks to tribal members who register for eagle feathers. And that program is going to have a trial run this year to see how well it gets received, and then perhaps if it takes off, we'll continue to do it. But I think that that is something that we can do here for tribal members that are afar. And sage grows really well here. It grows all over the place. It's almost a weed. But it's definitely one of our 4 foundational plants, cultural plants. So yeah. yeah, what is that? Huishkabamishkos, which is sweetgrass, sema, which is tobacco, kishki, which is flat cedar, and then wabshkiabak, which is white sage or prairie sage. Um, so there's about 40 flats, I think I calculated, that need to get planted out at the community garden. So lots of preparation for that. And um, what else do we got going up there? I already said gourds. We're planning on doing some dipper gourds this year. I've done little birdhouse gourds last year. And that was pretty cool. Lots of herbs like lavender and mints and pretty much anything the deer won't eat, we can grow. Right now, we don't have any way to stop them from coming into the garden. So things like okra and beans and other tasty, tender annual crops, they all get munched pretty fast. And I've kind of just learned that there are certain plants that we're not going to be able to grow up there unless things change. So yeah. Is there, now that we have a couple people with us, does anybody have questions?
I was kind of wondering what your biggest challenge was. I think that every garden has its own challenge, but I was just wondering what you faced that was a challenge. You mentioned the deer, so that kind of answered it probably for me. But really, I was just wondering if there was something that we could do as travel members that could help with whatever your biggest challenge was, you know?
Yeah,
so it would be nice if we.
Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. I was just thinking it would be nice if we could do something maybe to take away whatever it is that is the biggest struggle. Just you know, because there's things we can do, but I was just wondering about fencing and things like that. Hopefully something that you can do.
Yeah, I'm currently not allowed to put fencing up because of kind of the aesthetics of fencing around a garden that's supposed to be open to the public. Even though during COVID, it hasn't been open to the public, but yeah, so that's why I kind of have been forced to just grow things that don't get eaten. So it does limit the things that I can grow, but also, like, I mean, it gave me the opportunity to think about, well, what do we have? What can we do? And in terms of growing things that tribal citizens want, and the sage is one thing that everybody talks about. You know, those 4 foundational herbs are definitely big. There's a big draw to get some supplies for that, and sage being such a kind of controversial topic because of the over harvesting and poaching of the California white sage and the problems around gathering a plant that really only has a range in a few counties in California, and trying to supply really the whole world's needs for, because it's kind of gotten like, everybody used to use the sage that we grow at the garden, which is the prairie sage, the white sage. But then somehow it kind of got shifted. And so now everybody uses the California sage that really wasn't used for, you know, generations and generations. That's kind of a new thing. Yeah, but the deer definitely gave me an opportunity to grow something that I wouldn't have otherwise thought about growing in abundance.
Right, for sure. That's cool that you've thought of it that way and turned it into a positive.
Yeah, yeah. And other than that, I mean, you know, we're on the top of a hill, so erosion's always an issue, wind. The times that I've grown corn, it's always lodged, which is when it like lays flat in a windstorm. Doesn't matter if it's 4 feet tall or 6 feet tall, like it's still I can't handle like 40-mile-an-hour gusts on top of a hill. But yeah, those environmental things are just kind of, site specific. It's not really something that can be addressed with brute force or anything. I mean, I guess I could stake and tie up each corn plant, but that seems kind of tedious. So yeah, other than that, I mean, like right now, we're at a point where there's a whole lot of work and only me up there. So it's kind of that bottleneck where like I only have so many hours in the day. And so the more the merrier.
Okay, where is the garden located there in Shawnee?
Oh, it's behind the Sharp House, kind of by the prayer circle where the namings get done.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So it's up on the hill, kind of south of the powwow grounds.
And then, some of the stuff you had sent me some suggestions on when you sent me some of those corn seed. My wife and I have been researching more about like the Three Sister Gardens and the different planting methods. Does that help against some of the winds and stuff as you plant those like company or companion plants, and then the corn's planted closer, in a circle area, and then as you plant pumpkins and squash and beans, etc. Does that help reinforce some of it or not? I mean, just give the stalks support each other or not?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've actually kind of thought of it the other way, whereas like if you have the wrong variety of bean and you're growing in an integrated Three Sisters setting,
Yeah.
the beans actually can pull down the corn stalk,
Okay.
especially if you have like a kind of a shorter or smaller, like a flint corn or something like that. If you had like a giant flower, like some of the like the Walpole white or the Tuscarora white flower corn, those things can grow like 10 feet tall and have like stalks that are 2 inches thick. And in that case, like you could even grow a scarlet runner bean or something giant off of it. But yeah, it's kind of it depends on the variety.
I was switching between my phone and my laptop, and so I was just getting in when you were talking about the program you were going to launch about sage and tobacco and maybe allowing it to tribal members.
Yeah.
Will that be? Well, I mean, will you make seeds or plants available to tribal members if we wanted to try to grow it in our area, like the sage? And I don't know. I live in Central Illinois. So I know corn will grow well here, but I'm not sure about the sage and tobacco.
Yeah, sage definitely. It's actually the seeds I have are from Michigan. So
Oh,
the
really? Okay.
plants that I'm growing are, I can't remember actually that they're from Michigan or Wisconsin, but
Okay.
so they are from our homelands.
I would definitely like to try to grow tobacco and sage, and then I'm still checking with some friends I have up in Michigan. I think you and I exchanged some notes about trying to get the white or flat cedar.
Yeah.
Indigenous.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to get. I'm going to get up there later this spring or summer and try to get some of that.
Right. Yeah. And so like being down here in Oklahoma in the Southern Plains, we can't really grow sweetgrass. We can't really grow white cedar or flat cedar. That just doesn't work. And so I was hoping because we can grow the other two. We can grow tobacco and we can grow sage, and it grows really well. I was hoping that maybe we could like extend some kind of intertribal trade network or something like that, where like Hannahville, which has loads of cedar, we could trade sage for cedar,
That'd be cool.
or like Walpole Island that has like gobs and gobs of sweetgrass. Like they have meadows and meadows of sweetgrass. We could trade some of them, some sage sticks, which in a swamp, sage doesn't really grow that well. So
well, then I talked with a couple of those friends you recommend that I reach out to, Pumpkin and I think Kevin.
Yeah.
That about the yellow birch, and
Yeah.
so Pumpkin is as soon as we kind of get, as soon as I get my second vaccination against COVID and
Yeah.
then we can travel out of state some, we're trying to rendezvous because she's only about 2.5, 3 hours away.
Right. Yeah.
I think that would be really cool to, I mean, participate with you guys in as far as some kind of trade, because I'm right between you guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I enjoy watching all your posts online where you post about the sprouts and stuff. And
Yeah.
over the winter, you know, you had your the different plots and what grew over the winter, et cetera. So it's very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. We have about 20 raised beds that they get rotated around, and you know, I try to do something different every year. Slowly figuring it out. Believe it or not, even after 4 seasons, I'm still figuring it out here in Oklahoma. But yeah, there's some things. I feel like every season I get a good handle on another couple crops, and you know, I've been growing food and growing plants for nearly 20 years now. And everywhere I've lived in every region of the country, it's just been slightly different. So, you know, heat, cold, rain, no rain, like I've lived all over the whole country. So it's interesting seeing tweaking what I know and how I can make things work here in Oklahoma. And so far, it's a lot of fertilizer and a lot of water. Our soil, at least at the garden, our soil, the base soil is just clay. That's all it is. It's clay subsoil.
Do you have to add a lot of like peat moss or compost?
Oh yeah, yeah. So the raised beds are basically full of 8 inches of compost, and I do that twice a year. I have to refill them because the wind and the rain and everything washes the soil away. So if I don't refill it, like there's one bed that's strawberries, and I was just like, okay, the strawberries are perennials, they do great, but like there's no soil in the bed anymore, and the strawberries are just kind of like hanging on for dear life. So I kind of just made the decision this week to nix the strawberries this year and fill the bed back up again. So yeah. Yeah.
I did have one more question, and then I'll let other people talk if they want. So what I've read, and then I've been doing some work back and forth with Robert Collins there in the language department. But when we talk about our traditional tobacco that the Potawatomi use in around the Great Lakes region, and that in addition to tobacco, didn't we mix like red willow and some other things with it? And my question is leading to, I mean, is that still accessible where traditionally today people will still use a mixture like that instead of just straight tobacco?
Yeah. Yes, definitely. That is a wonderful question. And actually, I just was in the lunchroom this afternoon, and me and Robert got to talking about that. So yeah, that's that's our original tobacco, because you know, that's what I would call our like traditional sema, like the sema that you hear in the creation story and all those traditional stories. That's the sema that they're talking about. They're not talking about, because Virginia tobacco is a South American plant. And while there are trade networks and trade routes and things like that that allowed certain goods to travel, you know, from the Great Lakes to Central America, I don't, if I remember correctly, tobacco wasn't one of those. Like Virginia tobacco, like Nicotiana rustica, which is what the seeds that we have now are. And so that probably entered into our lifeways probably around the 1600s, 1700s, when the French fur traders came through and started, you know, really trading goods and commodities, knives, and for the whole, you know, kettles and pipes and all that kind of stuff that's my guess. I don't have any research to back it up, but I do know that like tobacco is not native to North America,
Right, right.
or at least that tobacco. The Virginia big leaf tobacco isn't native. There are like wild tobaccos, like a couple wild tobaccos that grow in the Southwest. Like one of them is called Coyote tobacco. And there's like a 4-leaf tobacco or something like that. But yeah, so yeah, and you being in Illinois, you have red willow available to you.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was living in upstate New York, it grew in ditches and like it grows everywhere.
It's
But
everywhere.
here we can't get it to grow for the life of us.
Well, what I'm interested in trying to do is get more, purity to a traditional tobacco that I use, for my prayers, et cetera, than just, going to a local tobacco store and
Yeah.
buy cherry flavored tobacco or something. But, cause even like some of the native, regalia stores and stuff, it just seems like it's regular pipe tobacco that, it's not what, so I know I've read about the red willow, and there was another plant that they used in there. And so I'm going to harvest that, because last year I was laid up a little bit over the summer after some surgery, and I made some pipe bowls from pipestone from Minnesota, carved that, and then it was flags. It's a sumac, but I'm trying to. Is it? I can't think of the first name. It's not flagstaff. It's
There's flame sumac and there's staghorn sumac.
staghorn. That's it. That's what I was looking for. His staghorn. Yeah, and so I've made a couple of stems, and then there's on a trail that we have in our community. There were a lot of the trees were damaged in a windstorm, so I went in and tried to salvage as much as I could, because a lot of that grows kind of somewhat crooked, but I got some pretty long pieces. So I know they're in the culture center. They have the reference to the eagle and the pipe, and tobacco were considered by our people to be two sacred messaging avenues to the great spirits. Was one, the eagle, messenger in between, and then the smoke that the pipe produces as it raises, takes our prayers and good thoughts, et cetera, up to the creator. So
I can forward you a video that I just ran across on YouTube that talks about how the inner bark of the red willow is our original tobacco.
Okay. I appreciate it, Kaya.
And it's like 3 fires, so it's not Potawatomi specific, but I mean, like I said, given that it's not a native plant to here, like it seems more than likely that would have been. And there was also that, like I said, that Nickanick, the Arctostaphylos uva ursi. It's a little trailing plant that grows in the forest. It's a manzanita relative. If you've ever been out west, there's lots of manzanitas out there. But this one's a little tiny trailing plant. It grows mostly in like pine forests and stuff. Has a little tiny red berry. But yeah, that's another one that people use for a tobacco blend.
Okay, well, great. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yep. Yeah.
Now, are there other staff people that help you there in the garden?
Yeah, I get the various departments will come out and volunteer up there for a couple hours a day or something. So I'm not typically alone, but in terms of full-time staff, I'm the only one. And that's kind of just out of their supervisor's kindness. Like they're getting time off of their outside time. They're getting time to work out of the office and volunteer to help me keep the garden running.
Good deal.
Because a half acre, even though it sounds small, it's a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah. Yeah.
And especially the way that it's all laid out. It's not like a half acre of, 200-foot rows and there's only 10 rows. It's like garden, there's like 20 little beds. There's 10 rows over here. There's 10 rows over here. There's fruit trees over here. There's, like
Yeah.
it's very intensive style of gardening. So yeah, we got approved for an intern, but like, I don't know if it'll happen given COVID and people not traveling and all that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, we also had an intern approved last year, but that didn't work out either. So, and that I had an intern on 2019, I guess it was 2019. And that was great. That was, I really enjoyed that. Yeah. She really brought a lot of energy to the garden that, I forget, even being 40 is a lot different than being 20.
Well, and just, we're 10 hours away from Shawnee, but somewhat like some of the archaeologists I know, where they do the professors in some universities I know around the Midwest, when they do digs, a lot of times they'll have certain times they need help, and they'll open it up, and then you have to kind of maybe pay for your room and board while you help them, but they'll let you help them. But I bet you would get, I would consider it, and I bet you would get others from out of state that look for a reason to get down to Shawnee if there's certain times through the growing season that you need a little bit extra, a few hands to help you. People will be willing to travel down and pitch a hand for a few days or whatever.
Yeah, that's a good idea. When are you free?
I'm retired, so I'm free. I'm recovering from another surgery, I think so, because I follow a lot of what the folks up in Michigan, like Kevin Finney and Pumpkin, those guys do. It seems like they have a lot of events where they get people from all over come in and volunteer, and they host, like I've seen them with the canoe, when they made the canoes and the bodikins, and Frank did the one with hand drums. They had a big deal where a lot of people come in. So I just think there's a lot of people in particularly Missouri, Illinois, probably Kansas as well. But I know, you talk to a lot of people and folks that I talk to online within the tribe. Other than the family festival, I don't think sometimes have an excuse or a reason they want to go to Shawnee, but they just never had a reason to go down. So I think Robert and I and Justin, I've talked to them, both language related and different ceremonies like drumming ceremony and pipe, etc. Are there things that we could learn online remotely, but then have opportunity to come to Shawnee, and then we could, help or get more involved that way? But I definitely,
I think that's a wonderful idea, and it's kind of been a conversation that I've had around here for the last 4 years is like, how do you engage people who are afar but who are seriously interested? And I think that is that is like, give them a crash course and then throw them in the deep end. Like, I think that's the way it has to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, two thoughts on that though is that, so I have a buddy in Colorado that has he has a woodworking business, but he works all summer up in the mountains on this lease cutting down beetle killed pine, and trucks it into Denver, and then he works in his shop all winter when he can't get up in the mountains. But he's asked, he goes, hey, if you want to learn more about this trade, come out and help me fall some trees. Because he's got like a 6,000 acre lease that he has to clear these trees from because they're a fire hazard. But in exchange, and you learn, you get to learn hands on. And so I was comparing it, thinking, Kaya, while you were talking there, some of these, there's a cook I don't, he's a big barbecue expert, and he's either in Texas or somewhere down south, and he'll host people at his ranch on the weekends. And, he teaches them basically all of his, how to, smoking and barbecuing recipes and stuff, and how to go about doing it. And I think some of the, because there's been several video meetings like this or sessions where they've talked about the different planning methods, the three sister and other, theories behind that. And so I think there's a lot of interest and hunger for it. People just, if maybe you've had an event like that in Shawnee, like over a weekend or a couple day period, and you would get help at the garden, but then, you maybe people could exchange ideas and methods and stuff. And then since we all live in different places, if folks come from out of state, if we're in the trade route back up here toward Michigan and those areas, maybe we could shuttle trade goods. It'd be kind of neat.
Yeah. Like this fall, I traded 100 pounds of pecans for maple. So like, that's the kind of thing that, like, we have loads and loads of pecans down here, but we don't have our maple. And you're not Three Fires, you're not Irish Nabe unless you got your maple. So it's kind of like wild rice and maple go hand in hand. So yeah, I think that's a very cool idea, and I would love to have a Three Sisters planting. Unfortunately, like I said, because the deer can't really do that, they just come through and trash everything. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that. I think
is it too I mean, have you guys considered possibility of like fencing that area, or is it not an area they want to put up a?
Yeah, they don't want to do that because it'll look they think it'll look uninviting, and it's a community garden, so it's supposed to. But I mean, honestly, there's got to be ways to make a fence look like inviting, and still, because I mean, they have community gardens all over the country in big cities, and they have fences, So I don't know. I think it's just something that maybe, with time, with enough, casual comments, they'll realize that, yeah, it might be prudent to put some kind of fence up,
Sure.
Until
that
then,
people, oh, I'm sorry.
No.
I was just thinking, as we grow, especially as I grow older, and we have our kids and they're asking questions, the more we learn about traditions and ceremony and different things like that, I think the more people are gonna want to come and be a part of that. Learning how to tend to it, how to grow it, you have to have a special respect to be able to do it properly. And so to have somebody teach you that, I don't want to just grow a plant in my garden. I really want to understand it and nurture it and respect it, where it came from, what it means, everything that it can do, all the things around it. So I think that people can give their work, but really they're getting something as well, because they're getting that time with you to be able to learn about it. Everyone's hungry for knowledge. Like I feel like all of us are so hungry to learn more and do more and be connected more. And I think it also, like, I know that my family, when we're gardening and when we're doing things and our hands are in the dirt and we're working together, that is such a good bonding experience. And I think that that's something that could be really great for us just as a tribe. So I think that, I know that you probably look at it like, please come help, like that's, but maybe you don't want to give, but really we're getting so much more. So like, we get your knowledge, we get like the little pods that you give out for people like that you sent me. I mean, that's so huge to me, but also you get all of that time, you get that bonding experience, you can bring your kids, they can learn too. And then you can also give back to something that just keeps going. So just maybe even having the mindset that it's really a gift to be able to come into your space and help you. I think that is, I hope that you see it that way, because when I think about going there and working with you, I mean, I think that it's really a gift. It's so cool. It's such a really neat experience that we won't ever get unless we are able to do that. So I just think that hopefully people will want to do that. And the more we learn, and the more we'll want to be involved in keeping those things going, because we can't teach our kids if we don't know, right?
Right. Yeah. Yep. There's the what is it? Cultural continuity part that
Okay.
that's really important, and it doesn't work unless there's continuity involved. Because then
So
everything you learn.
Brady, where are you located?
I'm actually right outside of Oklahoma City.
Oh, you're in
So
Oklahoma.
I was raised, right. So I was raised South Central Oklahoma, just right above the Texas line, so not far at all. So we take little special trips to go over and get food in Shawnee, and I take my kids to the cultural center, and my mom does language classes and goes to the classes on at the center. So I feel really lucky that we're close enough to drive and be there, as needed.
Well, yeah, Brady, I mean, if you're around, let me know. We can even arrange a day of the week, and I can put you to work, or we could go harvest some sage. It's not really time for sage, but we can go harvest sand plums or something. So we could figure out something to do. Because there is, even though the garden's only a half acre, it's 40 acres on the Sharp House property. So
That's cool.
There's more than just my little half acre. And that's like a bigger picture dream of mine, is to be able to have cultural plants and cultural classes and workshops kind of centered around not just the garden stuff, but stuff that you would find, you could forage for, you could harvest, or any of those. There's morels. Well, there was morels. Now there's not any more morels. But there's mushrooms. There's mushrooms at the Sharp property, and there's other things too. So yeah,
I think that's cool. Goals. That is so neat, and I hope you don't get discouraged, because I just think it's so cool what you're doing.
Well, thank you. I'm not discouraged in what I'm doing. I just get discouraged sometimes because it's a lot of work.
Yeah, for sure. For one person, goodness.
I think I sent you a note some months ago where I grew up in central Missouri. I had a family, a friend, that his father, everything he touched turned to gold. I mean, he was just hard worker, but he purchased all this river bottom that historically always flooded. And now he's one of the biggest pecan producers in that part of, it's just right outside, about hour and a half east of Kansas City, in around Brunswick and Sheraton River bottoms. But he did that. But the other thing that was really kind of neat he did is he perfected a method to cultivate all the native indigenous grasses that, like wetland grasses, and then he started with the Missouri State Department of Conservation, and then he was selling. His boys now have the operation, and they sell these native prairie grass. They can harvest it, they bag it, and they sell it to all these different conservation departments and stuff. But he was always just a very much involved with caring for the land and nurturing it, and knowing it would produce stuff. But he was very successful with pecans and then the native grass production. So I mean, as I listen to you talk about what your vision is with like our medicines and particularly the tobacco and sage and stuff, I think there's a huge opportunity if there's that much land in an area that you have to work with. It's just getting a plan in place and stuff.
Yeah, and there's definitely wild populations of white sage around, and so it's not even something that we really need to plant per se, but just because like
Sure.
So yeah, uh, try to walk that line between those two ways.
Well, there you go. That's what you ought to do. You'll have like a Kaya garden camp or something. I mean, I think you would get, I'm like Brady, I think you would get a lot of people from, even from outside, interested in a reason to pull them down the Shawnee, and then gain some cultural knowledge and learnings from you. And then you
Well,
get,
yeah, I mean, I can do a plant walk almost anytime. So if you're down here in the Shawnee area, just let me know. And it's not for a lack of knowledge or motivation. It's just usually there aren't people around that want to do that. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're at. I really would like to, when I got here 4 years ago, I had the vision of growing, because I started with like a little, probably 100 seeds. And my vision was, and from my elders and teachers and mentors, they said, you're supposed to start out small. You're supposed to start out with one mound of corn with 13 to 17 plants. If you can grow that successfully and you get 17 cobs, 17 cobs, each cob has 450 seeds in it. You could grow, it grows exponentially. And so you can grow, a half acre after the first year, but that first year will give you your experience in caring for the corn and caring in that way. Same with the beans. A lot of people, they grow these foods for 4 or 5 years before they even cook them once. And that's, you're supposed to grow enough that that you'll be able to grow the next year. And grow enough that if you have a bad year and you aren't able to grow, you have a surgery, you have, a kid fall ill or something, and something goes wrong, you still have last year's crop to go on. That was another one of my teachings, is that you're never supposed to plant all your seeds in one year. So yeah, that was my dream. My dream was to start small, and then, eventually in a few years have a half acre of corn that, I could share with the community, but it never quite produced that way on top of the hill. There was just always something that kind of stopped me from being able to produce that much corn. So that's why I started giving out seed anyways, and trying to see if it would take off somewhere else, because I really don't think that the current garden spot is a good spot to grow corn. Like you said, we grew on river bottoms. There's a reason you grow on river bottoms. It floods, and silt and nutrients every year get deposited there. And if you look at all over Michigan, the ancient gardens, the ancient garden beds in Michigan, they're all in river bottoms. You know, the quintessential Native American agricultural book, Buffalo Bird Woman, the Hidatsa women, they grow on the Missouri river bottoms in the Dakotas. You know, everybody grows on the river bottoms because that's the best spot to grow. But because that's the best spot to grow, it's also prime real estate. Everybody wants a piece of that land. Yeah. Yeah. You're on mute.
My wife likes it when I'm on mute.
Yeah.
No, I was thinking like around the geothermal ponds there there's not extra land. I mean, reason I thought about that because there's a fence there.
Yeah.
And I would think that soil that area might be better protected, but I think it has a fence around it. And then you'd have access to water if there would be enough of a parcel there that they would allow you to have a.
You know, I thought of that, and we have 23,000 acres, and there's got to be land. And I was told that I shouldn't even ask. So I haven't formally asked. I've just been informally asking, and I was told, nope, don't even talk about it. Unfortunately, we're not there yet. But, you know, I have my own garden at home where I continue to grow corn. So it's not something that's it's not going to continue on for me. It's just not, unfortunately, going to continue on up at the garden.
Right.
Until something changes, of course. Yeah. That was a hard choice for me to make. But given this last year, I sat through countless Zoom calls where the elders are saying, you got to take care of your seeds, you got to provide the right environment, you got to nurture them. And every time I planted the seeds, they came up all scraggly and barely grew. So I thought, well, you know, maybe this is Creator's way of saying, like, just wait a little bit. There'll be a time.
If I can't remember, Kay, if it was you that told me, or I heard this from another person I've talked to recently, but as you trade or share seed, like you sent some corn to me, then as your plants produce, you should either, return some of that seed back to the person who, kind of like offering tobacco and stuff, but return some of that seed to the person who gave it to you, or pass it on to somewhere else. So you keep the chain of those seeds.
Yep. Yeah. It's a gift. Those seeds that nurture us. I mean, they are provided, they have sustained us for millennia, and for them to remain gifts, they have to be given as gifts. That's why the teachings I was given, I was told never, ever, ever sell your seed, and never, ever give them to someone who will sell them. There are other people that say other, you know, they have other traditions, but that's what I was told.
Right.
So yeah, and hopefully I've been able to do that. So yeah. And like I said, I can still grow at my house and provide that way. But I, you know, I was talking with someone from Indiana, and they were saying that they could give me, you know, let me use 10 acres of their land in Indiana to grow our traditional crops on. And I got really excited. And then I thought, like, shoot, that's like an 8-hour drive for me. I can't do that.
Well, that's what I'm probably muted. No, that's what I was thinking. Like if I'm just thinking out loud here, but if you had, if you offered maybe like one of those, walk the garden weekend, or, a couple day class or session. And like Brady was saying, there's enough of us outside that learn some of the traditions and continue to honor the proper way to care for all that the seeds and different methods of growing and that. There's enough people who have access to parcels, like
Yeah.
an acre or more, that we can maybe continue that, but spread it outside of Shawnee as well. And then gives us it gives us, those of us that are outside in the other districts, something to collaborate and work together on too.
Yeah, and you being in District 1, there's that's the prime district for all our seeds. Like
Yeah.
they really flourish there. I mean, they've spent millennia there, so it's been interesting growing them down here and watching them try to adapt. And one of my teachers said, it just takes a couple years, it takes 3 or 4 years. And then you just select the ones that grow best. And then after 3 or 4 years, but I think the jump from Michigan to Oklahoma is just a little too great.
Oh yeah.
It's just a little bit too much in one jump for them to actually do well. And all of the stories that I've heard of people who have taken their seeds and traveled with their seeds, they went from Kansas they went from the Great Lakes to Missouri, from Missouri to Kansas, from Kansas to Oklahoma. So that's like 4 or 5 generations of seeds that are slowly transitioning. Whereas I'm just like, pow, here you are in Oklahoma. And one of my elders said that, or my mentors said that, the day length, just because we're a couple degrees south, day length matters. Like when you take corn from Oaxaca, Mexico, and try to grow it in Iowa in the research stations, doesn't do well. You can't really do it. You have to transition it to that day length.
Yeah. Well, I believe that, because even when I lived in Missouri, the conservation department would transplant and they would trade wild turkeys for pheasants with Iowa and stuff. And a friend of mine's dad was the conservation agent for our county, but it was like from the 1960s to 1990 before they could get pheasants deeper in the central part of the state. Just they can only bring them across the state line into the counties closest to Iowa. Year by year they brought them deeper and deeper into the state. But for some reason, there's a point where the soil and mineral and the habitat just isn't conducive to trying to stick them, 200 miles further. But nature will have a way to adapt. I mean, if you look at like the black bear in Missouri, that's exploded.
Yeah,
it was when I was growing up there.
Right, and so that's why I'm this year I'm not really growing any Potawatomi varieties, and I'm instead focusing on varieties from tribes around here, like Cherokee. My wife's Cherokee, and so they give away seeds, and so I'm growing some of those seeds this year, because I've had the one year that we had success with corn was the year that we grew Cherokee corn. So I really want so badly for those Potawatomi varieties to grow well here and to be able to grow them. And something tells me that there's a mismatch.
Yeah.
But I've had friends who grew Potawatomi varieties here and they did well. So maybe it's just the mismatch is me. Every gardener has kryptonite,
Yeah.
There's some crops that just don't do well. For me, a lot of times it's tomatoes. Like I can't grow tomatoes for the life of me. I get a decent harvest, but like there's always something that goes wrong.
Right. But the whole topic that you just you covered there, though, it really shows the hardship on the people when they were forced marched west of the Mississippi, and they had to bring what traditional seeds and plants, et cetera, and ways down to Oklahoma, Kansas, et cetera. And it just doesn't happen overnight, even though they were marched in a few months down there, those varieties wouldn't acclimate to that environment. And it was hard. I mean, it was terrible.
Yeah. And as far as I can tell, by the time we made it to Oklahoma, nobody brought seeds down this way.
Yeah.
There's Kansas varieties, Kansas Potawatomi have varieties, but no, as like through all the archive research, all of the talking to elders, everything, all of my master's thesis, I've never heard of anybody say like, oh, my great grandpa, talked about this or that. And I think it's just one of those things where it was just one more move, and it was just like one less thing, and it, like just got chipped away to where like, oh, we just don't, we'll get seeds when we're there or whatever, like, and vice versa. Like, so Robert, or Kevin, do you know who the Tuscarora are?
No, I don't.
The Tuscarora are the sixth nation in the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Iroquois. And so they were originally from up there in the, upstate New York area. They were part of the original Haudenosaunee Confederacy. But in the 1600s, due to a bunch of intertribal conflict and, settler conflict, they moved to the Carolinas. And then about 200 years later, they decided, oh, wow, it's not any better up here or better down here. We're going to move back up to be with our people. Hopefully they can, all together we can be protected. But it took 90 years for them to slowly travel north. Every year they travel 50 miles north. And so their corn had 50 miles of adaptation every year. And so they have a wonderful white corn that they grow that is genetically, according to Western science, genetically, it's really close to the Cherokee white flour corn that the Cherokee grow in the Carolinas. But yeah, that shows that just like through a slow evolution, through a slow process, it can happen. But it's got to be slow and gradual. And they still make a journey to South Carolina every year to honor that old homeland, and they go camping. They have a camp out every year, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Do you, in your research, Kaya, I mean, is it similar to what we the modern day farmer does with hybrid seeds and perfecting the right seed for all the different soil conditions and climates, et cetera? Did your research reveal though, like a lot of the tribes, several hundred years ago, et cetera, would trade different seeds and maybe perfect a hybrid corn, if you will, as we know it today, between the trading different seeds and pollinating it with different types of seed or species of corn seed?
Well, yeah, I mean, like, yes, in a way, and no, in a way. It wasn't necessarily hybridized like they do nowadays with like sweet corn, so much as if there was a regional variety that did really well, it would obviously be traded because it did really well. And, people wanted to be able to have food during the winter when they wouldn't be able to go get food. And so, yeah, it was definitely, like I was saying with Cherokee corn and the Tuscarora white corn, they're really genetically close to each other, but like you can't take the Tuscarora white corn now and grow it in Cherokee country because it's 500 miles of 900 miles of difference, and so but the Seneca corn, white corn, and the Tuscarora white corn are really closely genetically related, and you can do that. In fact, some people say that the Walpole white flour corn that we have here, or that we have, the Potawatomi Walpole white flour corn, is actually just the white flour corn that the Seneca grow, but the Potawatomi were growing it too. So yeah, there's, and take the beans, for example. Some people call it Ohio pole beans. Some people call it Miami pole beans. Some people call it Illini pole bean. Some people call it Potawatomi pole bean, but it's all the same bean. It's just whoever gave it to you, that's the one you honor. And same thing with with the long neck squash, the cushaw. Some people call it Illini squash. Some people call it Potawatomi squash. Some people call it ho-chunk squash. Like it's just,
Mhm.
it makes sense to me in that like things that were successful, varieties that were successful and grew well and did well and were tasty and delicious. Like, of course, you're going to want to trade those. You're going to want to get your hands on those seeds.
Right.
So, yeah, there's a lot of that goes on, but not in the sense that the selections, because indigenous science values different things, the selection process is different.
Right.
Like for me, when I select seed, I have number ones, number twos, and number threes. Number ones are the biggest, most healthy seeds. Number twos, they may have a little bit of blemish and maybe a little bit smaller, but they're still great. And number threes are like, well, number threes are for just for food or for food. Number twos are for food or for regular, for like non-ceremonial food, and number ones are for planting and ceremony. So there's a lot of different things, ways to select. Some people, they just take the middle of the cob. The top third is for you to eat, the middle third is for seed, and the bottom third is for the animals. So throw the bottom third out to the animals. They keep the middle third for seeds, and they keep the top third for eating. You know, like there's a lot of different ways that people do it. But yeah, there is some selection involved. And by sharing seed, even if you have the same variety, you know, microclimates do exist from even one valley to the next. So you could potentially get a scenario where you know, your white flower corn does really well in this valley, but after a while it kind of like gets all funky, and so you trade it with your neighbor, and then by mixing in just a valley over, you get that genetic rebirth. And they've done that because, you know, nowadays with so few families growing these traditional varieties, like it happens where, oh, there's only one family that grows that kind of corn, but then, like, you know, 300 miles away there's another family from another reserve who grows that same corn, and so if they swap seeds, then you'll get some new genetic material that will help out. And I've heard stories of people doing that, and like, oh, our corn, you know, our cobs grew 2 inches in 1 year because we mixed in the new variety. Oh, it's top of the hour. You got me talking about plants. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, I see. Oops. All right. Yes, all good suggestions. All good suggestions. Well, if no one has any other questions or suggestions, I will let you all go. I hope you have a good rest of your week, and hopefully the people that I've shared seeds with, I'll get to see your efforts come. Well, you're kind of Kevin, you're kind of far north. When are you planning on planting? When's your last frost?
They recommend like the 10th on Saturday.
Okay.
And so we've this week we've been in the 70s. So the ground, a lot of people have already planted like, spinach and lettuce and things like that this past week. But corn, I sent Paul Schmickelhofer,
Mhm.
the farmer across the road from us. He was already disking and planting corn yesterday. which is a little early because a lot of them, they like to plant it, you know, 1st of May, the field corn.
Yeah.
But depends on how wet we get in the spring, and it's been pretty dry, so a lot of them are getting it. But my wife and I plan to start next week, hopefully, with our garden. And from what you've shared with me, do the corn first. Once it gets started, then we'll do beans, and then I'm going to do pumpkins and squash, and then we'll probably do some, decide a couple of tomato plants, things like that. But I definitely have got my plot for a 3-sister planting is what I'm going to try with the corn, beans, and pumpkin and squash.
Did I give you sunflower?
No, my wife said
No.
you didn't. My wife's got some though.
Okay.
My wife's originally from Kansas. That's where we met. And so, yeah, we've always liked sunflowers. We've had the real big, 12
Man.
giant ones to the little ones and stuff. But yeah, we like sunflowers. And I was I can't remember what the tribe was, but there were some ladies up north that had a Zoom meeting like this about a month or so ago. And they talked about some flowers to plant, like marigolds and some other things for around the garden that actually aided in keeping some bugs and pests and things out of it.
Yeah.
But
Some people plant bee balm or wild bergamot on the edges of their garden. Some people plant sunflower. I know some folks down here who do a lot of amaranth in between their gardens. Originally it was our agriculture was 7 sisters, and before this is pre-corn,
Right.
and it was called, well, academics call it the Eastern Agricultural Complex, and there's still those plants out here. So yeah, like lamb's quarter, there's another. It's a weedy one that a lot of people let grow in their garden because it's like a spinach relative that you don't even have to work at to get spinach from. So
I do plan to put sunflowers over on the perimeter, but yeah, I'll keep you posted. I'm gonna record it chronologically with photographs and stuff how I did, so you can be a judge of how I've done, and hopefully we'll have seeds that we can share at the end of the year.
yeah, I can't wait. I look forward to seeing what you get to go growing. All right, folks. Well, I got some hungry kids that want dinner.
Hey, I appreciate all you do and your posts and stuff. I mean, I know I don't ping back very much, but it's always very helpful. I just like the tidbits, but definitely the things, not to rehash it, but the things we talked about, I would support you, and I'd make a trip down to learn or help you out and whatever.
All right.
Okay. Thanks, Kaya.
Bon appetit.
Bon appetit.